So I am here with my mother. Her name is Brenda, and we are going to be talking about her childhood home. So how long did you live in that house?
I spent about the first 12 years of my life in that house.
Did you move to another location after that?
Yes, moved about 2 miles away.
But did your dad still own the house?
Yes, my dad still owned the house, and my oldest brother and his new bride lived there for about 6 years, and then another brother of mine lived there for about 6 years, and then me and your dad, when we moved back to Nebraska, got to live there for about 6 years.
So this house has been a big part of your family.
Yes, it has. Yeah, a very big part.
What are some of the things that, when you were a child, what are some of the things that you used to do around that house or in the house?
The house was on about 3 acres of land, so, and at that time it was out in the country, outside of Lincoln, so it was a very rural area. We had a big garden. We had at least 1 or 2 cows that we used as butcher cows to have meat, and for a short period of time when I was younger, we had a horse that belonged to a cousin of mine there. But my sister and I spent a lot of time playing outside. Oh, we had chickens too. So we had a swing set. In the summer, we would have a stock tank that we would use as our little swimming pool. We played a lot of games. Had a big tree that we climbed. We had a barn that we did a lot of exploring with a rope swing, playing up in the haystack. So just a lot of fun times playing with my sister.
You basically had like the picture perfect childhood of like this beautiful home and this barn out back and all this space to play in, and yeah. So can you describe what it used to look like when you were there as a kid?
So my first recollection of this house was it being pink. Looking back at the pictures in the photo album, I see it was originally white with pink trim, and then it got painted totally as a pink house with white trim, and that's what I remember. When your dad and I lived there, the siding, it was a wood siding house, started to get in pretty bad shape, so we ended up ripping off all of the siding, and your grandpa helped your dad stucco the house. So the outside totally changed from wood siding to a stucco house that we ended up painting. Or actually it had a tint in the stucco, and that's the way it stayed until it was torn down after my dad sold the property.
All right, so what does that place look like now? Have you returned to it after the house has been torn down?
I've only driven by. I haven't actually walked there, so you can still see, it still is that 3 acres of property. It had a white wooden fence, and you can still see parts of the wooden fence that are no longer white because all the paint is off, and you can still see some of the trees around it. But now where the house is, they tore down the house, and it's just kind of a big dirt pile right now. So there's no house there anymore. There's no barn there. There's no outbuildings anymore, but still a little bit of the fence and some of the trees.
Why did Grandpa sell the house?
It was a piece of property that was no longer rural, and there was it was surrounded now by businesses and a new housing development, so it was kind of this island in the middle of urban life, and it was just time to sell it because it was more profitable to sell rather than to keep the house as it was, that was being surrounded by the city.
So the city limits basically just kind of overgrew the house, and then it just didn't quite belong there anymore.
Yeah, I think that was a fair and accurate statement.
Do you know who he sold it to? Do you remember?
He sold it to the business that had built next to it that owned all the other property around it.
Gotcha. It'll probably end up being urbanized as well, right?
Yeah, I think eventually, if they want to build another building or expand it into a parking lot, or it'll just be, an extension of their existing commercial area.
Well, is there anything that you can do there now? Or is it basically their property and it's kind of gone now?
It is their property, and it would be trespassing if I went over there. So, yes, I haven't been there since when your grandpa sold it, and we did one last walkthrough and took a whole bunch of pictures. And it's been, at least 15 years, I would say. Well, maybe not 10 years since it's been sold. So no, I've not been there very recently.
See, yeah, I just remember spending a little bit of my childhood there. I know I was very young, but I do have snippets of memory of being in there. And then I do remember when we did the one final walkthrough of the house before it got torn down. And wasn't there something special about the doorknobs in that house?
The doorknobs were a glass doorknob. So it was, kind of looked like crystal, but it was just made of glass. So I know I took some pictures, and I don't remember if I was able to save a doorknob. I don't think I was. But yeah, I always loved those doorknobs.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing this with us, and I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.